A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90. We are here in the Central Building, the home of this radio station, but we are live on the different radio listening apps, which you can obtain from the apps of your smartphone. You look for any of those radio listening apps, download, look for Radio 1 FM 90. And as long as you have an internet connection, you should be able to listen to us from anywhere across this globe. Radio 1 is also live on its website, www.radio1fm90.com. You click on the icon with the word Listen Live. Now, you can also find this radio station live on your TV set. If you have a DSTV connection, you look for audio channel 897. My name is Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, your host. And today, being a Friday, we review the major events of the week. We'll be looking at the current political environment and key developments that we have seen. We have seen the Electoral Commission continuing with the display of the National Voters Register for people to verify their votability. Some issues have come up. The fact that the NRM is also, cleaning up its register. There are some stakeholders who have been complaining that this situation actually causes confusion. People do not know which register to actually attend to, and there are issues there that they think that the Electoral Commission needs to address. We have seen some key developments within political parties. The FDC party launched the process for identifying its flag bearers for the next election, and people have picked nomination papers. So far, for the presidency, we know Budadi West MP, who also happened to be leader of opposition at one time, that is the Honorable Nathan Nandala Mafabi, picking nomination papers. We are told also the incumbent, Patrick Amriato Boy, has also picked papers to contest as a flag bearer for this political party. They are also looking for candidates for the different other electoral offices. The same is happening in the Democratic Party, where Norbert Mao is coming back again for the position of party president, and he has all interest to contest for the presidency. Now, in the main opposition party, that is the National Unity Platform Party, the past stories have returned to haunt them. The alleged kidnap of some of its members, including the chief bodyguard of the leader himself, that is Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, commonly known as Eddie Mutwe. The Chief of Defense Forces, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, last night confirmed via his X-handle that he was under his custody. A planned meeting earlier today at the NUP headquarters to discuss this situation and what would follow was thwarted after SFC soldiers were rapidly deployed around that particular area. It's not clear why Eddie Mutwe is being held, but postings from General Muhoozi suggest that NUP should expect more should they not change their ways. So we'll be looking at these developments in deep to understand what they mean for the political processes in this country. Tomorrow is World Press Freedom Day. We will be joining the rest of the global community to look at what is happening when it comes to media. In Uganda, we still have challenges, including the continued targeting of journalists, especially those covering political happenings. We have heard about instigated self-censorship in newsrooms where certain media houses are told not to run a certain story. We have heard about tension and fear among journalists ahead of elections when they remember what actually transpired in Kawempe North. Everybody is discussing what is likely to happen in the forthcoming elections. When you look at the different reports that have been lodged, armed forces remain the major perpetrators when it comes to violating rights of journalists. Now, despite all these realities, media remains a major player in the democratization and development agenda of our country. So how do we improve our bad ratings when it comes to press freedom? Time allowing, we'll look at the rights of workers and the commitment by government on their long-standing demands, including minimum wage, contracts and banning of casual work, the issue of banning foreigners from doing work that Ugandans can actually do, and a number of other things as pronounced by President Yoweri Museveni at the commemoration of the International Labour Day yesterday. The panel. Mr. Joseph Ochieno, congressman. He comes from the Uganda People's Congress. He's also a pundit on governance, development, and global affairs. Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me always, and as ever, I am delighted that I can say that you mentioned Labour Day, but we are the political party of the workers, founded in 1952, predominantly as a party that was set to look at the interests of the Africans in terms of their welfare, in terms of wages, in terms of the fair prices for the ordinary peasant. So it's an important day, but unfortunately I think people take it for granted and people tend to sort of politicize it. But I think Labor Day is really very much about really the day-to-day issues of ordinary workers, and should really also be about the general emancipation and welfare of the people, particularly the ordinary citizens.
Joseph Ochieno always using any opportunity he has to brand the Uganda People's Congress. In studio also Mr. Timos Chimonges. He's Executive Director at the Center for Policy Analysis, also Executive Director at Parliamentary Watch. Timothy, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Anderson. I'm glad to be here. Greetings from the Center for Policy Analysis and Parliament Watch. We are glad to be here.
Also in studio, Dr. Sarah Birete. She's the Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance. She's also the chairperson of a global network of election observers known as GENDEM. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me to Xtra. Good evening, fellow panelists.
We expect our fourth panelist, who is Honorable Lydia Wanyoto. She is chairperson of the NRM League. She did Women's League. She did represent this country at the East African Legislative Assembly, and currently she serves on the board of the National Planning Authority. She's on the way to join us from the NRM caucus meeting, which was in Entebbe. And now let me begin with you, Dr. Sarah Birete, on the political environment in the country at the moment. You've been following cleanly because of your interest in issues to do with constitutionalism, governance, but also elections. And we have a big election coming up next year. But actually, we are told elections begin long time before the day of casting the ballot. So we want to hear from you first. What exactly is your take on the current political environment?
Well, I think this week has been full of dramatic events. It was supposed to be a week of display of the voter register, but I think even us who engage with the public through mainstream media have no time to talk about the register because of dramatic events in the country. Just a few minutes ago, the Uganda Human Rights Commission has issued a release order for Mutwe, also known as, we commonly know him as Mutwe, but
he's called Sebufu Rogers.
Edward Rogers, for immediate release from the CDF, and they have put the CDF on notice that if he does not release Mutwe, he will be in contempt, because the Uganda Human Rights Commission has powers of High Court. But how do we find ourselves here? Since yesterday, the CDF has been on rampage with his infamous tweets, priding about impunity, priding about abducting and torturing Mutwe, who is the chief bodyguard of the leader of the biggest opposition party, Honorable Chagrani, or Bobi Wine. And his tweets have sparked off tribal attacks, because he said he's teaching Mutwe Runyankore. I happen to be a Mnyankore. And the tribal sentiments on social media make me both sad but also glad that they should happen, because we should confront the monsters within society. Many people out there have a perception that Banyankore are part and parcel of the impunity going on, because the top head of state happens to be a Mnyankore. And unfortunately, when the chips are down, then you will have Banyankore also saying, this is Vahima, these are Iru. The usual, tribal, deep-seated tribal differences within Banyankore. But why do we find ourselves here? For the past two regimes, we have had names, and I was young, maybe people will share other information, because I'm based on stories told. But I saw Anyanya, the reference of Anyanya, when the fighters from Sudan had come in to help General Tito Okello Lutwa during that war. Anyanya came to Uganda. They had a hole, a basin in Mbarara. There's a deep hole they were hiding. And in Bushenyi, we couldn't sleep. Anyanya, they were asking for a way to Bushenyi, because Bushenyi was known as home of Obote. And they said they wanted to come to Bushenyi kill everybody, chop everybody with pangas. So we couldn't step outside home as children until we fled our homes. So when you see people on social media, these are elite Ugandans, elite young people, men and women, saying now Banyankore, you must speak out. To Ankore community, you have created this impunity. What does it mean? One is that the long stay of President Museveni has created so much hatred for Banyankore because his government is dominated by Banyankore. But today, it used to be, by the way, the first NRM government used to be dominated by Banyankore. Maybe first, second cabinet, third. Today, how many Banyankore are in cabinet? You look at the vice president, Itesot. The speaker of parliament, Itesot. The deputy speaker of parliament, Munyankore. Prime Minister, Hoima Munyoro. And others. The first deputy prime ministers, West Nile, Moses Ali, Kadaga, Busoga.
Finance.
I don't know who is the other one. Nakadama, where does she come from? Busoga.
Finance.
So, look at Minister of Finance.
Yeah.
Matia Kasaija,
Yes, yeah.
Hoima Bunyoro. Look at who are Banyankore in power?
Okay.
So there's a national outlook.
No, yes, so who are the Banyankore in power? You can pick maybe Dr. Bariomunsi, who is a Mchiga, not a Mnyankore. You can pick Jim Muhwezi, Muhororo, not Mnyankore. Who are the Banyankore in power? But the anger is coming from the impunity, excessive impunity of the president's son. I don't even know whether the president knows what the son is doing, or whether the president is in charge of the army, as commanded by Article 98 of the Constitution. Because the president is the head of state, head of government, commander-in-chief of defense forces, and fountain of honor. Does he still warrant these titles? Does he still merit these titles? Does he know what the army is doing, headed by his son? After Kawempe and the impunity that we saw, also commanded by his son, you saw the kind of letter he wrote, asking Bazhul, what was the army doing? What do you think we should do? Did he sound like a person who is in charge? Is he okay? Is he in charge? Does he know what the son is doing?
Well, we have seen the president is in charge. Just as of yesterday, he was speaking in Nakalpiripit as we commemorated the International Labour Day. So the president is around and conducting his normal duties.
Waking up and going for the function is not the same as knowing what is happening in government. So we might need to question at one time whether the president is actually in charge or not.
So do you think what is happening has a bearing on the ongoing political process and the elections we're planning to have next year?
So away from these issues, the largest opposition party, NUP, is under siege by the army. Even as we talk now, journalists have been told by the army to go away from NUP. NUP's offices are under siege. Journalists have been told to go away. Even the army has run after them to beat some of them who were insisting on covering the events surrounding. So do we have space to organize for elections? I don't think so.
All right, let's move on and hear from Mr. Timothy Chimoges. Mr. Timothy Chimoges, your thoughts on this particular situation that we are confronted with. You heard from Dr. Sarah Bidete, but I know you also are an avid follower of discussions on X, where the Chief of Defense Forces has been posting, of course, with the support of his followers, those that believe in him, including the Minister in charge of Youth Affairs, Balam, who from time to time retweets and also has comments, accepting the things that the CDF has posted. And also, if you can tell us from your observation, what does this mean for the political processes and the elections that are planned to happen next year?
Thank you so much, Anderson. I think I should start by first commending Mariam Wangadia for the first time, the chairperson of the Human Rights Commission, for coming out very clearly without having any grey position in terms of what is happening. Clearly condemning, but also providing a clear leadership in how the CDF has actually used his powers both in practice but also in the media to conduct business. And I should also agree with Sarah that I think it's very unfortunate that we find ourselves where you have people who hold mandate, and they have chosen to be deliberate in exercising impunity of the highest level. We've again, this is not the first time that we've seen individuals being arrested, being abducted, and others taken incommunicado, really. But what piques my attention really, it's the level of bravado, the level of impunity that even upon conducting the what would be called the legal arrest and breaching the 24-hour, the 48-hour rule of producing any person who has been arrested if there is any cause to be produced before the courts of law. And so it's also to say that the conversations that are arising out of this are very dangerous, both for the growth of the country, but also for the well-being of the people. We've seen in many countries where, as a result of actions of state officials or government officials, that has created animosity in the country and has led to conflict of tribes. And the direction that we are taking, if we are not careful as a country, we may find ourselves in a place what would want to call maybe rock bottom, where we get tribes, individuals starting conducting themselves within those cocoons. And so I think that we don't want to even imagine that we can get there. Ultimately, I think that the question of ensuring that there is clear leaders in government, and for seeing what Mariam has done here, issuing very clear orders, we need to have more of these individuals, because for now such a long time we see individuals trying to hide, not taking very clear position when wrong things are happening. We've seen the CDF Kainerugaba, who has continued to use his platform to put out statements that by all means and purposes fall below the mandate that he holds.
I know you are a researcher. I wanted to ask you this question. Do you think really it is him behind those tweets? Some people still think that he's not the one, really. Some people say President Museveni wouldn't allow his son to actually do that.
I think, you see, yesterday, one of his tweets, actually, as we discussed, one of the things that he was emphasizing is trying to suggest that people think that I'm not the one managing my Twitter handle. And in one of his tweets, he says that you need to take me serious, and I'm the one who tweets. So
he said that.
He actually he issued one of the tweets, and so he's come out very clearly. But also to the extent that there is no any other alternative evidence or information
in the contrary.
In the contrary, we have very limited options really to think that there is any other person who would be tweeting for him. But what disturbs me most is the nature in which his orders, his conduct has actually been received by other colleagues who actually hold the mandate. We've seen his instructions being implemented by UCC. We've seen other individuals, and including ministers, the one you've mentioned, the state minister of
Youth Affairs. Balam.
Looking at his conduct is one and the same with CDF and how they have chosen to conduct themselves. So I think that is quite unfortunate. And as we head towards the general elections, we are thinking that it can only get worse, because then if the head of state, who ideally should be able to take charge of the situation and call to order most of these individuals, there is nothing that is happening, and individual is abducted, and all of a sudden you come on Twitter and you're like, we are trying to teach the colleague or the gentleman some local language, and it has continued. Even the leader of opposition himself, Chagulanyi, has come out to condemn and to put out a statement, and in reply immediately you see that the comment is that we shall come for you.
And he actually said, what will you do about it?
What will you do? I think that is the highest level of impunity, trying to put the citizens or the country to a place of trying to determine what they can do in the face of impunity. And so I think that even as we move forward, I think as a country, as the different stakeholders, there is need to reflect and see what can be done in the immediate move immediately.
What do you think can be done?
I think that at different stages, really, there are quite a number of strategies that could be done. I think the opposition could come out very, very strong to not only condemn, but also adopt very practical actions that could maybe call for more attention from the government. My earlier thought was actually that the opposition could actually choose to mobilize its followers in boycotting some of the products, some of the events, some of the things, as a way of just sending a signal.
I don't know if that will work. But stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. We need to go for a break now. When we return, we'll hear the views of Mr. Joseph Ochieno from the Uganda People's Congress as we continue to review the major events of the week. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Xtra will continue after this break. We're glad that you're still with us on Spectrum Xtra, reviewing the major events of the week. My guest today includes Dr. Sarah Birete, Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance. We have Mr. Timothy Chimonges. He is the Executive Director at the Center for Policy Analysis and Parliamentary Watch. And now coming on the mic is Mr. Joseph Ochieno, Congressman, a pundit on governance and development issues. Thank you so much for joining us. Your specific issues, comments on this issue of the political space. Your colleagues chose to discuss in depth the issue of NUP and the challenges that they are facing now, and the activities of the Chief of Defense Forces. What's your take on the political environment?
Ken, when the six months administration rule of Tito Okello, as referred to by Sarah and the experiences, that's the most chaotic administration that this country has ever had. Chaotic in terms of their form. It was 6 months. But that regime was one which was backed by DP, backed by other forces, backed by NRA. The Okellos came in, they did their deal, and within a month they had broken up, and the Okellos now remained as chaotic as they were. Not surprising that, of course, other forces remobilized and got rid of them, and the Musevenis came in exactly seemingly as they planned. Beyond Tito Okello, we had 3 interim administrations since the fall of Idi Amin. We're dealing with the post-Amin situation. We had 9 years of Idi Amin. Amin had his excesses and his extremes. But the impunity that we are facing today is one that since independence, really indeed since the formation of the Republic of Uganda, since the Brits came in here, it has never happened.
Really?
No, never.
Well, we've seen
not even under Tito.
We have seen documented things, including books that were published talking about the Pearl of Blood, where we are actually told in those books that there were mass killings. We have not seen mass killings at the moment, Mr. Joseph Ochieno.
No, mass killings happened in Kasese. Mass killings happened, effectively genocide in northern Uganda. Mass killings happened in Kampala. Killings here in Kawempe. Killings have happened. Killings in my tour. By then, in Agongera, there's a report 2 years into NRA, by the 2 years, not 6 months of Okello, 2 years into NRA. 3 people were buried in one grave by the sub-county headquarters. So these are things we don't want to go ahead and reopen. Under the NRA of Mr. Museveni, I'm talking context of the extraordinariness of what happened in Kawempe and business as usual, what happened yesterday at NUP headquarters and business as usual, and what happens that the commander of the armed forces issues a statement. Now these days we are talking meaning Twitter, meaning public statement, 24-hour stuff in people's hands, and makes the extraordinary statements which are almost close to tribal, the way he actually says that I'll teach him Lonyanko. It's very sad. It's a terrible statement. It's actually fair acidic for me as Ochieno. I find it very strongly anti-Ugandan for me as a Ugandan Republican citizen of this country. I find it actually obnoxious. In any case, I have been off the social media thing for the last 2 days. Thanks to the incompetence of NRA, that the other day I went in and I had to lose my phone. I can link it down to the incompetence, But number 2, that you direct it at the official leading opposition party. That's why I was giving context of Idi Amin and others. You know, I mean, Sam Amin was military dictatorship. No, we are talking about NUP, a political party whose headquarters down the road, you know, and the bodyguard of the leader of opposition. Uganda illegally kidnap him, and then you come and boast, and you're an army commander, boast, and you're not only army commander, you're Muhoozi Kainerugaba, son of Mr. Museveni, the ruler, president of the Republic of Uganda. It's extraordinary. It reminds you of 1976 of Idi Amin's toy son, you know, in Makerere University. But that was actually almost for show. You still cannot compare it. So I'm saying it's extraordinary. I'm saying lest Ugandans forget, these are, in my opinion, is amongst the worst arrogant element of impunity. And I think, as Tim says, it's good that the Uganda Human Rights Commission has come up and taken a position. It's very interesting for us to see what happens over the next 2 days. But I think, shamefully, if it's 40 years of Mr. Museveni and you're trying to ask Timothy whether or not who is in charge, if Mr. Museveni doesn't know what's going on, then Ugandans must be really, really worried. If Mr. Museveni's son's Twitter handle, ex-handle, is being used and abused by other people, and he doesn't know, then we must be really, really worried as a country. I think what Ugandans are not discussing, possibly the possibility, the faint possibility that Mr. Museveni is not in charge, that his son has taken charge, but his son is possibly in a very scary state of wanting to prove a manner in which he comes to power. In other words, almost controlling the Republic of Uganda, but in a manner which is actually non-conformist. And that should really worry Ugandans. And if we are taking ourselves, as you talk about the rivers of blood, as you can talk about the books, the experience we had possibly under Idi Amin, the mess in the Wero bushes, the mess that the NRA, but the NRA was rather crude in 1986. I was here in Kampala and I saw how they died, people can die. So people died systematically. But you just look at all those other things and then you bring us back to possibly the last 20 years, and you have a right to argue that perhaps we should no longer be having this kind of conversations, meaning that we should really have moved on, that our conversation now should be like, look, you know, we all erred, we all had mistakes, we all made mistakes here and there, but this is where we are. We need to be able to have a Republic of Uganda in which we learn from the past, negative past, and we're able to do better. That's not the case. Very, very worrying to me.
All right, we want to hear from you. What do we need to do to sanitize this political environment the way it is now?
I think, by the way, you didn't talk about the fact that UPC is officially leaderless, but Jim McKenna too has issued a roadmap. But in the absence of organized political position, one of the things that we would possibly have expected, actually amazingly, and I was telling Timothy during break, that perhaps the challenging thing is that we actually don't have a clear national leadership as an alternative, because I would expect political opposition leaders to come around, rally around, and maybe even before the Human Rights Commission issues a statement, that the democratic opposition needed to have rallied in support of whatever's happening at NUP headquarters and take a position. I hope and I expect that the opposition political parties come and rally around, that they're able to be at least at a leadership level, because part of it, sometimes you can claim that the regime will not allow us to go ahead and organize in Agongara and things like that. I would like to see national leaders of organized political parties giving a lead in terms of alternative. And that, to me, I hope it should actually include fantastic friends in NRA, NRM. And we have fantastic friends there, people like the leader Wanyotos and others. You know, they're very reasonable, decent people with whom we're able to sit together and simply say that, no, some of the things which is taking place today is not enough. Meaning what? We begin to mobilize a critical mass of Ugandans, including fantastic Banyankole friends of mine like Sarah Bireta. And by this, Sarah talked about the identity element in Ankole, which we have generally nationally. You talk about the Yoruba Bahima. I have got fantastic Bahima friends, and I know one or two who find it absolutely unacceptable, the nonsense which is happening today. We just need to mobilize as Uganda, simply say that no, this country doesn't belong to Mr. Museveni. His son, he's the guys of people who are pushing for excesses, that we need to reclaim it for all of us. And that, led by organized political opposition, organized political systems and leadership, that the guys in the system recognize that you cannot continue with it. Right. I think that should be able to check whatever is happening.
Thank you so much, Ocheno. Now, we've been joined by a fourth panelist, who is none other than the Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, chairperson of the NRM Women's League. She's fresh from the caucus. She served this country as a representative at the East African Legislative Assembly. She's also a member of the board at the National Planning Authority, a lawyer by profession, but also in the past, she did also practice as a journalist. Good evening, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, and thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum Extra.
Good evening to our listeners and viewers, and to my colleagues, comrades in the studios. I'm happy to be here at Spectrum Extra, and thank you for the invitation.
All right, you did find us deep looking at the political environment, how things are shaping up, and one of the critical issues that was picked up during this discussion is the manner in which the National Unity Platform Party is being treated, especially by the CDF, the Chief of Defense Forces. You are fresh from the NRM caucus. Probably you can share with us whether some of these things find their way into the caucus there. Do you discuss some of these things and the likely implication? But also you can share with us your view on what could be going on, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto.
Well, if whatever is happening which is not in line with maybe the constitutional order is unfortunate, but as you all know, I'm more focused on following the Independent Electoral Commission roadmap. We are preparing the NRM party to participate in the elections, and one of the agenda items today to our members of parliament was to brief them how the party is preparing for the elections. So we are in NRM, we are more focused on the roadmap. But we are not blind to what's happening. I'm also reading these things the way you're reading them in social media. I do not have a physical witnessing of like how we are in the studio. So what I'm seeing on social media, I hope that you can share with me what you've seen physically away from the social media.
What have you seen on social media?
I've seen issues about I've read about the arrest and the tweets allegedly from the CDF about to some gentleman called Eddie Mutwe.
Eddie Mutwe.
But this I'm only reading the social media. So I hope that if it is what's happening is true, then they should be able to engage the relevant authorities.
You've used a word there, allegedly tweets. From
yes,
the
because I don't have proof really from what I'm reading in the social. I'm reading things in the social. My phone, I have a smartphone.
You do.
So if you guys have anything beyond the smartphone, you can share and maybe you can call to order. But I cannot really read social media. Some people, I don't have evidence that what I'm reading is the truth, and that I can come here and authoritatively talk. I can authoritatively talk about the NRM and the roadmap.
All right. You want to talk about the NRM and the roadmap. You're preparing for this election process, but some people will tell you that the political environment does matter. So are you, anyway, as NRM, concerned about some of these happenings as you're preparing for your roadmap? Your would-be competitor, NUP, cannot exit their head office. They cannot organize.
We have a relationship. We have a relationship with all the players. There are formal or informal ways of how we relate. So beyond the social media, I have not received any brief from the Secretary General or our colleagues like Interparty to say there is this political quagmire or problem where they call upon us as political parties to make a contribution. I am not somebody that reads things on social media and then I come and begin talking. Really, I'm very formal in the way I do things.
But there's an authoritative statement from the chair of the Human Rights Commission.
Uganda Human Rights Commission.
I've seen it's on social media. I've just come from the caucus. I've seen the Human Rights Commission chair, the memo, also on social media. So if you ask me, then it means that this problem we are discussing here, I'm calling it unfortunate if it is true, then it's in the right hands. It is reaching out to the right offices. I mean, human rights is not just any other institution. They are calling for action, and maybe for them that they have authentic evidence that there is an issue at NUP vis-a-vis the leadership of the UPDF.
All right. Let me put
if it comes at a political level, I'll be happy if I'm delegated to have those joint efforts to see that maybe if the NUP preparations are being hampered, we come level but the first people to call is actually the referee, the Independent Electoral Commission. It's not me, the member of the NRM. Yes.
All right.
Actually, if you're talking about the general elections, please do not miss out the umpires. This talk show, if you want to talk about NUP and what is happening to any political party, bring the Independent Electoral Commission here so that they tell the country that the ground is leveled or there are issues. Because it's not fair for us to become spokespersons of the umpire or talking about the environment is supposed to be leveled by the Electoral Commission.
Well,
and if there is a problem, they can stop actually us from preparing anything and say the ground is not leveled. Let's first of all sort out either NRM has a problem or NUP has a problem. That's my thinking. Yes.
So it's your considered opinion that the political environment as we are leading to the 2026 general election is fair?
Where I am concerned, it's okay, and we in our NRM party things are heated up. For example, we have aligned our roadmap for internal practices, internal elections, to the National Electoral Commission, and the road that the program is running. In NRM, the program is running, but from the social media, I'm seeing also other political parties like DP, like FDC. They have also the UPC. They are very busy. I don't know whether there are many factions, but the UPC that I know, they are very busy also organizing the ground aligned to the Independent Electoral Commission. But let me say this to our listeners.
Okay.
The Independent Electoral Commission has a singular obligation to level the ground for us to have elections. So it is good for senior citizens like those who are in the studio to talk, but let's also push the mandate to the Electoral Commission of the country.
What would you tell people?
As far as NRM is concerned, where I sit, I'm even a candidate. I am very busy preparing for this election.
What would you tell people who are arguing out there, including opposition parties, that actually the powers of the Electoral Commission have been usurped? They are completely new referees for these elections. Security, mainly, is where they are pointing their fingers.
Where are they leveling their complaints from? Because they know what to do.
What would you advise them, Honorable Wanyeto?
They go to the Independent Electoral Commission and petition, and specifically say where it is, not general. The environment. Meanwhile, you are winning elections, by elections. You are preparing. On the other hand side, you are saying we are not. Let them put their case to the feet of the Independent Electoral Commission, or they can even come out and show cause that this is not a leveled ground. Because the way I see it, the people who are preparing, who are not NRM, very seriously, independents. Half of the second biggest presence in parliament are independents. Independents are very busy preparing for this election, if you don't know.
All right.
I've met very many people, because I'm in the field, who are saying, you keep away your political parties, I'm coming independent.
All right.
So while they're making noise about political parties, Parliament might end up with the majority independent. Are you aware?
All right.
Are you aware?
Yes, we know there is a sizable number of
you
independents,
and I don't want me to miss.
And most of
I
them,
don't want to miss the boat.
most of them are NRM leaning.
Don't be surprised if the next parliament
most of
majority
them
are independent, because now they are the second largest. Are you aware?
Most of
they are
them
the second largest in the house. We're
most
talking about parliament as the mark.
We agree. Most of them are independent, NRM leaning, and they have complained about lack of democracy in your party.
But it's their right to go. They are
right
to go and contest. That's why they are going independent. You don't have to belong to a political party in Uganda.
All right.
No.
All right. Spectrum X on Radio
You
1.
go to people and they vote for you.
All right. Keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703-090-090. That's the voice of Honorable Lydia Wanyeto, who happens to be the chairperson of the NRM Women's League, fresh from the NRM caucus. She has shared with you her views there about the political environment. Let's now go back to the other panelists. And Dr. Sarah Bilete, you started this discussion. You've probably heard from your colleagues around the table. And what could be your response to some of the issues that have come out so far?
No, my good sister and friend, the Honorable Wanyeto, her submission has really taken me aback. NRM is the party in power. NRM is accountable for the excesses and impunity in the government. Their chairman, I had quoted Article 98 of the Constitution. Their chairman, Article 98 defines him as the president, head of state and government, commanding chief of the defense forces, and fountain of honor. A majority party in elections forms government and is accountable. So when you say you are seeing things in social media, the same things on social media are in print media, are everywhere. They are the events happening in the country. Social media, we are no longer in the days where social media was dismissed. It's new media. The world has gone digital. So seeing something on social media does not make it false. Same headlines running in Daily Monitor, in New Vision, at the same events we are discussing. Bob Wine's bodyguard has been missing for 1 week. And only yesterday, the country is shocked. NUP had even applied for habeas corpus. The country is shocked that the CDF is boasting about abducting and torturing members of opposition. The same CDF happens to be the president's son. The conduct, NRM is accountable for the conduct of UPDF. They are the party in government. It is not a question of for us, we are busy organizing for elections. NUP party as we speak now is under siege. It is a headline in Monitor. Under siege by the UPDF. So it's not that we are seeing these events in social media. Have you physically been there? Do you want us to go physically under the torture chamber in Imbuya? Where do you want us to physically go?
Should we not also be concerned about why the army is interested so much in NUP activities? Maybe there could be an issue that
this morning I tweeted that the UPDF has overthrown Uganda's constitutional order. Laws are useless because of impunity of the president and his family. And who are enablers of family rule in this country? It is NRM, it is leaders like my sister and friend. They are enablers of family rule in this country and impunity. And they cannot begin dismissing events as social media events.
When you talk about family rule, some people will say you're taking this out of context, because earlier on as we were beginning this discussion, you did agree that at the moment we have a government that brings together people from different tribes.
Why do I call it family rule?
You can't say it's a family rule.
Why do I call it family rule? What qualifies Mhoza as a CDF of this country?
He's a soldier.
I know, but do you think he has more merit than all the generals we know that are professional in this country?
Maybe.
I don't think so.
So he has a ranks.
Anyway, Museveni and his family have entrenched themselves. We have family rule. We have impunity because they are untouchable, and they have overthrown Uganda's constitutional order. And all that happens in NRM government, where my sister is a top leader in the party, a SEC member. So NRM are enablers of impunity. NRM is accountable for the 5 years we are in, including events of today.
Right, Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, you can hear from your sister and friend there insisting that as the NRM party, you have to be held accountable for what is happening at the moment. I don't know if you want to respond to her, because she has directly pointed fingers. Your party is in power and therefore should pretend over what is happening.
She's entitled to her opinion, and that's why we are in this studio.
Yeah.
Part of the reason people express, somebody out there is listening to the views here, and they will be able to take it up. The NRM is not, because I'm in the NRM, I don't have a monopoly to all processes and whatever is happening. I am not everywhere like we want to say MTN. I have clear mandate, and I have clear roles and responsibilities. So that area of security, you see, I didn't write that release Eddie Mutwe. On the media, like you are saying, it is Human Rights Commission which is writing. So institutions that are responsible should be able to take action. If what we are seeing on me, I've been reading social media. I've not had a chance today to look at the other print media, not even the TV, because I've been in the meeting. But I've seen and I've not denied. But if what we are seeing is true, and if the letters of the Human Rights Commission are also true, like I've seen here, because you cannot run away from misinformation, it's also there. But if this is true and the relevant institutions have taken action, why should I come here to lament?
All right, Joseph.
But people like Sarah and yourselves, this is your space. So please lament, bank tables. Somebody is listening to you. No, but for me, if the Human Rights Commission is responding, And if the UPDF have a spokesperson and you've chosen not to bring him here, and if the Independent Electoral Commission have a spokesperson and you've chosen not to bring him here, and you've brought me here, and I'm like, let the relevant institutions take action. I am not running away from responsibility. I'm only trying to stay in my lane. But civil society, you're also doing your work. Make the noise, bang the tables. You can even climb on the tree so that you can be heard. That is your right, and it is your space.
All right.
So if I came here to speak like the way Sarah is speaking, then I'm doing her work. That's her work. I'm also saying, I'm trying to tell you that where I sit, this institution called the NRM has delegated the powers. If you assign me to raise this matter in sake, or if I realize that there is no attention to it, I can raise it for way of saying what's happening. But the Human Rights Commission is taking action. You are speaking, he's speaking. We shall leave here and go home. Maybe tomorrow you come to Capital Gang, we speak about it again. But let the relevant institutions, and please give relevant mandates or account for institutions to do their work.
Okay.
I do not want to speak for the Independent Electoral Commission. I don't want to speak for the UPDF. I want to speak for the NRM.
Joseph, quickly.
And if there are any issues that are bordering people's rights, I can only say it's unfortunate, but let the relevant institutions take action. I don't think I want to jump on a lamenting forum because that's not me.
All right. Joseph, quickly, before we go for a break.
I really hope that our conversations here...
You want me to come here and I start crying also? No, I will not.
You will not cry.
I really hope that our conversation here is not about crying and lamenting. I hope
it's your space.
Lydia, I think this is a space for all of us. That
space.
includes NRM, and I wish I could...
I have told you what should be happening, that the relevant institutions should take action. That's what I'm saying.
I'm genuinely surprised. Lydia is a fantastic friend. Lydia is a friend and a colleague, and I hope we may end up in Capital tomorrow sharing fantastic breakfast. Look,
so what do you want me to say? That I start crying?
I'm genuinely surprised that as a member of the Central Executive of a ruling political organization, one is a political organization, NRM of Mr. Museveni, that you don't have an opinion. Lydia,
I've given an opinion because it's not aligned to you. I've given an opinion already.
Lydia, the very least...
I am only saying what you don't want to hear, but that's not my work.
No. With the very least I expected of you.
I said it's unfortunate if it is true. What else do you want me to say? You want me to go with you to Mbuya? Where does General Muhoozi sit? No, I'll not do that.
All right.
It's not my work.
Spectra Bex on Radio
Ugandans, you're really alone.
Let's go for this break. When we return, we'll continue reflecting on these topics, but also looking at the comments that you're sending in from the WhatsApp number. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90 will continue after this. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Today we're reviewing the major events of the week. I have a panel of 4 people. The Honorable Lydia Wanyoto. She's the chairperson of NRM Women's League, and she is also a former Ugandan representative at the East African Legislative Assembly and a board member at the National Planning Authority. Mr. Joseph Ocheno, Congressman, Pan-Africanist and Pandit on Governance and Development Matters. Mr. Timothy Kimonge is Executive Director, Parliamentary Watch and the Center for Policy Analysis. And Dr. Sarah Birete, Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance, Chairperson of Global Network for the Domestic Election Observers. My name is Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, your host. And we've just been discussing the state of the political environment, a number of issues coming there. So I'll read out some of the comments that are coming in from the listeners, and we see how the panel will actually respond. We have a comment coming in from Mwalimu, who says, Radio 1, the CDF's comments are deeply concerning, particularly his glorification of torture and exploitation of tribal divisions. As someone married to a Mnyankole, I know firsthand that many in the community reject hatred and violence. However, these comments are fueling hostility. Even in my own neighborhood, I strongly believe the president must take charge and intervene to prevent potential escalation into widespread violence. And supporters of MK who are drumming support are many young people who are surely yearning of leadership tomorrow. The country is steadily sliding into anarchy under a complacent watch. We have a comment coming in from Namunyo, listening in from Namisindwa district, who says all detention and arrest is done by the ruling government in order to weaken their opponents and create fear in the people so that they support the NRM party. Since most people now have lost confidence in the ruling party, the NRM, due to brutality acts done by security forces. We have Kauma Digo listening in Mitiana, who says, good evening, Spectrum. I draw the attention of listeners to President Museveni's warning to UPDF not to repeat past army sins. This was at Kakieka, Mbarara during the 42nd Tarehe Sita celebration. Is his warning being heeded to? That's his question there. We have Patrick writing and said, hello, Kenneth, thanks for the show. I think it's extremely unfortunate that a CDF can go as far as that, kidnapping people, degenerating them, and then comes out to openly brag about it. What about Runyankore? What has it got to do with the arrest of Mr. Chagulanyi's bodyguard? Is this the ethnic line Mr. Museveni and his son are trying to tread? Where is it going to end? I feel ashamed to be part of the country like this, where the CDF goes against logic and president is as silent as a grave. God save us. That's a comment from Patrick. Dr. Shepherd writes in and said, hello, Spectrum Extra. Thank you for the show. Madam Lydia Wanyoto is also helpless as many Ugandans. She says Ugandans should report the CDF's inflammatory statements to the relevant authorities. Let her kindly tell us which relevant authorities we should go to when the army leadership doesn't respect the constitution. That's Dr. Shepherd there with that comment. Sharif writes in and says, Anderson, the most unfortunate one is people like Madam Wanyoto pretending not to know what is happening. They should be more formal and condemn such things. We have another comment. Good evening, Anderson and the panel. All the people from the so-called NRM party, which for me I don't even think exists, are heartless. There is no political parties in Uganda because we can have parties which are not allowed to gather and talk their supporters. I disagree with this statement. Not all people in the NRM are heartless. So let's not generalize everything. Richard, Lydia is very poisonously pretentious. At her level and age, she is a mother and a national leader who should help steer and nurture decency for all to thrive. This ugly act of acting clever on shabby occurrences debunks the intellectualism expected of our leaders. Then we have another comment. Kenneth, good evening. General MK and Lydia seem to say social media is not media. I heard the president of Uganda mourning the passing of the Pope Francis. Lydia has proof the president or it was a social media post. Do you have proof that that was the president or it was a mere social media post? We have a comment coming in from Council Sarah Namlondo, listening in from Muyenga. The abduction of Eddie Mutwe, head of security for National Unity Platform, leader Bobby Wine on 27th of last month by armed men allegedly linked to Uganda People's Forces Command escalates the already tense political environment. General Moros Kainerugaba, the military chief and President Museveni's son, openly claimed responsibility on X, boasting about detaining Mutwe, which signals brazen impunity and state-sanctioned repression. This incident, alongside other abductions of NUPSA members, intensifies fears of targeted crackdowns on opposition figures ahead of the 2026 election. It further erodes democratic space, undermines public trust in institutions, and risks fueling unrest among Uganda's youth, who form NUP's base. International condemnation is growing, but without stronger intervention, such abductions may deepen Uganda's slide to authoritarianism. That's a comment from Council Sarah Namlondo, listening in from Muyenga. And then we have this comment from Charles, who is listening in from Tororo. It's a Spectrum Extra. Honorable Lydia Wanyoto is so annoying, but we wish them well. That's his comment there, listening in from Kumi.
Not in the UPDF.
Well, many other comments are actually coming in, and we'll talk about them in detail as we continue with the discussion. Joseph Ocheno, you want to go first to respond to the comments coming in from the listeners?
I'll just try and build on to what I was concluding before break, but yes, I'll be fairly brief, because this conversation is very unfortunate. Ken, I was a constituency chairman of the British Labour Party in 2001 when Blair and Bush invaded Iraq. It was one of the most difficult jobs. I was also a member of the local government executive and fairly up middle there. I can tell you that I saw what democracy is like. Blair had been, just a few years earlier, a guy who would walk on water in terms of popularity. Labour had absolute majority. The Conservatives were struggling to make a comeback. The political position established, very strong media, and as you know, in normal democracies, we have the executive, we have the legislature, we have you guys at the fourth estate, and we normally have we, the poor citizens, called the fifth estate, who are miserable, can be picked up at will of those and will and whims of those. But this is what happens, and this is what happened. Cabinet ministers, you go into cabinet and you have a conversation and you say, no, come on guys, I am not with this. People resigned from the cabinet. because they did not agree with Blair. They did not believe the Blair argument. People shouted in Parliament. People shouted across the country. People went in the streets. Cabinet ministers again broke ranks and went through to the picket lines. Now, of course, typical Ugandans, especially NRA supporting Ugandans listening to me, they'll quickly say, oh, Cheno, that is London. Nope. It ever happened in this country, and that is the standard of democracy, and that is what a UPC government of the future would expect. That when there's a difficult issue, like 1963, a conversation around the presidency, when we want to dissolve the position of the Governor General, a big conversation, you take it internally. The youth league of the party nearly was trying to storm out, wanted to break, because they wanted their vice president to be the president, and the UPC leadership at the core were saying, Sir Edward. It's about 1964, big referendum issue. You take positions, people take positions, regardless and including risking their coveted positions. You go to 1966, people debate, people take positions, people resign in this country. You go to 1967, of course, one section of Uganda was sort of neither here nor there. People go, people take positions. That is what happens in democracies. You come into the 1980s, 1981 and 85, even when these NRA bandits were busy breaking people's necks in Luwero, there's a functioning parliamentary democracy. Crude, heavy debate between the Democratic Party opposition, main opposition party. There was no way in which Paul Semogere's driver would be stopped and arrested in the streets of Kampala. The Museveni bandits were busy breaking people's necks, including throwing bombs here, just a few hundred meters away from your studios here, lest Ugandans forget. Mr. Museveni knows that. They did it. You know, there's no way in which a member of the opposition, a member of the Democratic Party, would be stopped at Parliament or between here and Kampala Road and Ginger Road and Bombo Road. It did not happen. These bandits come into town, take over power, go ahead and crudely rule for up to 1995. Set up a constitution, including a constitutional comment. I need to complete this one. And 20 years on, the mess is happening down here.
The people you are referring to as bandits.
They're bandits, actually, by their behavior.
Actually, revolutionaries, people who
liberated
this country.
Revolutionaries, that's Wikipedia definition.
It's documented in
liberated this country for what? They liberated their tummies, they liberated their powers with the arrogance that they do have.
Earlier on,
who was liberated here?
Earlier on, you were talking about the misgovernance by the Tito Okello Lutwaz. And these are the people that they kicked out.
Oh no, the Okellos were friends. But as a matter of interest, Ken, not as a matter of interest, Museveni, Tito Okello, DP, a certain section of clerics, granted 1 or 2, 3 UPC guys, coordinated and connived to overthrow the democratically elected government 6 months to elections. By the 6 months to the December 10th elections in 1980.
All right.
The Musevenis tricked the poor Okellos. After they tricked the poor Okellos, pushed the Okellos away, and then came to power. I am saying their friends, the Okellos, were really, really messy. You know, that is true, including using the fact that they actually had people that they brought in from the Sudan. I'm giving context, and I'm saying the last people to treat Ugandans after 40 years in power are the NRMs considering their foundation. This mess has never happened in this country.
All right, let's hear from you, Timothy. Very quick response to the comments that came in from the listeners.
I think that I agree with almost all the submissions by the listeners in terms of the concerns of what's happening in the country. And that in times of this nature, we ought not to be taking middle grounds.
No.
I think it's very clear that there's need for clarity, but also there's need to be very clear in terms of where you lie, either on the side of impunity or on the side of the people. Because again, I think that for the ruling party, whereas it's good and it's important for us to weigh into what's the electoral process and organize internally, there are fundamental issues that are happening in the country that we ought to pay attention. Because even if in the worst case scenario, if these things take shape, they may frustrate even what you're organizing in terms of the elections. Listening to the listeners are raising concerns around the question of tribalism and what the remarks by the CDF has been on rampage on the Twitter, which is actually fueling the question of tribalism in the country. And if this continues, we are likely to find ourselves in a tribal war. A thing that actually may frustrate many of the things that we are organizing, and therefore, I think that while NRM is right to push for organizing for the Electoral Commission and many of these things, there is need to be very clear in terms of the conduct of some of its members, some of the state officers who actually who have come out very clear in some of the things that are affecting the country. And maybe just more two things, Anderson. The first is around comments by Lydia here around the role of Electoral Commission to levelize the ground. In the most recent by-elections in Kawempe, we saw what was happening really. The Electoral Commission were not in charge, and even when they attempted to do that, they were overshadowed. And so you see that as we move, as time goes, you see that the Electoral Commission are actually victims of their games.
If you don't mind, just briefly, and I think part of Lydia's point is actually critical, that in Kawempe particularly, I have actually suggested, and I think even Sarah in different spaces have heard you, that in the event that the Electoral Commission felt, because that's the obligation to conduct free and fair and peaceful elections, if they're finding it, if they find that they're being overwhelmed, say in Kawempe, what would they expect from Simon, who's a land lawyer and I'm told is a retired judge? It is to take a position and simply say no. If not, like leader says, simply say that look, the situation, the condition is not conducive, and if you guys don't, you want to overwhelm us, we shall, we feel this process cannot continue. Yeah. So that is calling leaders to order every aspect, just like the guys from the Human Rights Commission did take. So it's also the burden of responsibility lies with the Electoral Commission. And in Kawempe, they did fail. Simon Biamakama failed as much as Mr. Museveni and his commanders.
All right.
Yeah, maybe just one more thing, Anderson.
You wind up your point. We need to hear from Honorable Lydia Wanyoto.
Absolutely. So the comments of the CDF, while it is true that this matter may not have been discussed in the caucus and the other platforms, I think it's not the first time that this matter and the conduct of CDF is coming. You
interact with members of parliament in the corridors there as you do your work as parliamentary watch. Do they share about some of these issues? Because this is not the first time that the CDF has gone tweeting.
No, it's very clear that when it comes to making a very clear public position, that's where they draw the line, and they choose to be on the safe grounds. Because everyone is trying to assess and trying to be on safe ground.
Are you saying all that MPs behave like that? They just play safe?
I'm the one asking the questions, Joseph.
So we've not had very... And the reason as to why actually you see that there's a very great welcome by the statement of the Human Rights Commission is because this seems not to be normal. Yet ideally, these are things that institutions should be calling out individuals.
Sort of long overdue.
Yes, so it's long overdue. This is actually, while we commend her, I think it's something that should be the manner in which public officials, the colleagues in the political parties, should come out very strong to condemn some of these things. Because the impact and the consequence of these sort of actions, statements, are very, very expensive to the country, to the political parties, but also to the citizenry. All right.
Let's hear from Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, a response to some of the comments that came in before we actually widen the discussion on your preparation as the NRM for the forthcoming elections. Your quick response.
I want to emphasize the importance of institutions and the actors. If there is an issue involving an individual of a political party and he has been landed at a political party, please involve the relevant institutions. I do not see why, if you have issues with the CDF, you do not invite here the spokesperson of the UPDF, so that you do not load me to speak for the UPDF. I just want us to, am I a small scapegoat or what? Because this guy is not to be the head of security. He's a CDF. In the structure of the CDF, can I give you the phone contact of the spokesperson of the CDF?
We have
so that you do not use me to pay the price of you smearing. Let them come. No, let them come and speak. I want to speak for the NRM and take the blame for the NRM. But I do not want to speak for the UPDF when the UPDF has a whole department that speaks for the NRM. Why do you have asked me? Secondly, for the NRM, no.
Does
no.
The head of your party
There's a difference
president.
between the president and the head of the party. So if the commander-in-chief has appointed a structure, I'm not even the spokesperson of Museveni.
You are not.
Yes, so I'm not the spokesperson of the chief of defense. But I have said, but I have said that if these things are happening, they're unfortunate, and I expect the relevant institutions to take action. So, Human Rights Commission, hold it to account. Police, hold it to account. CDF or the UPDF, hold the spokesperson of the UPDF to come and account. I'm now here to tell you as a citizen that let institutions do their work. But you cannot hold me accountable. I don't even have a rank, so how do you begin holding me accountable for the statements of the tweets of the CDF?
You are a political leader.
So I have said
and a civil authority.
Yes, but I can only speak
the CDF
against the spokesperson.
The CDF is supposed to salute.
So why would I come to speak for them then? If you know that civilian authority is much higher, bring here the CDF spokesperson. The guy is called Magezi. Can I call him for you?
No, I actually have.
So why are you fearing him?
I'm not fearing him.
Why didn't you invite him?
Because we are discussing the political
environment.
No.
But I mean, according to the table here, they've crossed the line. And if they cross the line, they should be brought to order. And the only people that should be brought to order is the institution that should come here. I just want to be fair to the listeners.
All right.
That sometimes you want to load us for things we're not accountable for. The second one, we have inter-party cooperation. This one, Otieno is looking at me.
iPod.
So if UNUP thinks that, if they really believe or think they're in trouble, why don't they throw the alarm to the sister organization? Say, come and we put together. I was in Ikawempe. That's why today I'm speaking like this. And that's how to listen to me. I was in Ikawempe. I was deployed in Ikawempe for the listeners. And I was given a parish called Imperere. When I got to Imperere, I said I am going to ensure that this parish delivers results. I found their security, I found their members, I found their opposition. They were ready for a fight. I told them, guys, this is a civil exercise. And there was no single signal from 3 a.m. to 5 when I signed off the declaration form for me to say, now you people do this or that. So the security was there, the opposition were there, and they were many, they were ready for a fight, they were ready to die. If we do not deal with extremism, extremists on all sides of our society, we have a problem.
All right. I
walked out of Umperere with declaration forms and went to the Charlie Center. I was one of the few people that had declaration forms.
So
my people, wait, because I was in charge. I took, if we want to know how some of us are really trying to make a contribution, we must deal with extremists on either side of the colors if we want to help Uganda.
All right.
So I went to the Charlie Center with declaration forms. They are the only few that we were able to deliver. We didn't win as NRM, and people have been surprised that I could sign where we did not win as NRM. And those results are those of the few that declared Nalukola to be the winner. So when I went to talk shows like this one, and I said in Imperere, those who did not have any results were saying they were beaten, there were no results. But on one hand, you want a person who has won, that somebody won. On the other side, there were no results. What type of people are we dealing with? So no people wanted to kill me, that I said that there was peace, there was peaceful election in Imperere. The NRA wanted to kill me, that how could you say there was peace, there was violence. So you see what I'm talking about?
That's a mark of leadership.
I just went to Imperere and I said, we must provide leadership in Imperere. And it's account of those results, which are few, that they will have somebody elected, although there is a petition. Now, the no didn't want to hear that there are results, even NRA don't want to hear that there are results. Now, how could they announce? If we all broke boxes and told results, what would have gone the Charlie Center? Would we have an elected person to replace the Segirinya? So my point today is, you have to choose whether you want to take either side of extremism. Uganda does not need extremists. Even when we come for talk shows, I don't want to do the work of Human Rights Commission. I don't want to do the work of activists. I don't want to do the work of UPDF. I want to do the work of a leader that has a contribution to make. Today, I went to the caucus of the NRM. The issue we are talking about was not on the agenda. So how do you expect me now to come here and lie to you that I have to raise my hand and begin talking about a matter that's not on the agenda when the relevant institutions are taking action? But it is okay for Sarah, who is an activist, to raise this matter. So that I take notes and I go and I say, the civil society is up in arms. How is this matter going? And does not have to be a formal meeting. I can now I can call the chiefs of police, I can call CID, I can call say, guys, what's happening here? So I want to let you know that we should deal with issues of extremists. We have extremists, all of us. Civil society has activists. The media has activists in covered up that they are media. The opposition have activists. They don't even call us when they're in trouble. We also don't call them when we suffer on our own. Who tells that in NRM we do not have? We have our own fights. But because you have to be strong, it's like a marriage, an African marriage. You hold yourself so, because if you say they are being beaten, they are fighting. Who doesn't know that we are going to into primaries and there's going to be a very heated activity beginning on the 6th, which is Tuesday. But we some of us, so you say we vumilia. You hustle. You hustle on. But the inter-party cooperation should work. So I cannot come here to begin to speak if NUP has not picked a phone to call NRM. I don't know whether you get my point. So they should call, and then also it's a lie for people to tell us that the environment is so bad. The Electoral Commission is quiet. Independents are preparing elections. DP is announcing candidates. FDC is closing nomination for candidates. So whom are you speaking for about nominations? Even NUP has announced the process for elections. So if there is a key player in NUP who has issues with the UPDF, let's zero case by case and see how. But if you generalize, you lose an opportunity.
All right.
I think so. Let me raise some two cases.
Very quickly before we actually move
so
on.
that
time is not on our side.
Note.
I'm taking notes, but I'm not going to speak like an activist.
No. Nobody wants to be an activist because you're not.
No, that's your calling, by the way. It is. So,
yeah,
and you own it.
You are not.
Me, I'm not. Yes.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, NUP mobilization tours were stopped by police.
I'm taking notes.
NRM is free to go about their business.
And other parties.
2 is NUP has been under military siege since Monday, when they had called their youth to mobilize for youth participation in special interest group elections where nominations are June. It has been under siege since Monday. The siege has increased today. So is NUP free to do its activities as a party or not? These are clear examples of a no conducive environment for elections.
All right, she says she doesn't know, and I think we'll put that to bed, leave that discussion. Let's shift our gears now and look at the issue of press freedom in our countries. One of the things that is also connected to the democratization process in our country. And Timothy, I want to begin with you on this particular issue of press freedom. Tomorrow we'll be joining the global community to commemorate that particular incident, that particular day of international press freedom. And when you talk about press freedom in Uganda, and you just Google a little bit, you will see reports that suggest not all is well, and yet we know the crucial role that journalists actually play in our country, Timothy.
So thank you so much, Anderson. So today, during the day, under the auspices of the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association, we came together to commemorate really the World Press Freedom Day, as it will be tomorrow. And there are very fundamental concerns, specifically including the timeliness of this discussion. Today, we saw journalists who were actually covering the NUP offices, receiving a bit of, they were being sent away, others were assaulted, just for purposes of doing their work. We've seen in the most recent times when the most recent by-elections and how journalists were deliberately attacked, were deliberately targeted, and it's very concerning in how the new approach of the state dealing with the press, it's being very deliberate and very vindictive in nature. I've recently seen a report by the Human Rights Network for Journalists indicating that in the recent past, at least 130 cases have been registered of media rights violation in the recent past. And those range to as far as, assault others, the equipments being taken away, and many of those big challenges. When you look at the Press Freedom Index, it tells you that of the 180 countries that were assessed, Uganda stands at around 131 of those of the total number of countries. It tells you that there's a fundamental problem, first of all, in how we view the different professions, the freedom of expression, but also in how we appreciate the need for the people to access information, to engage freely, but also, the deliberate action of targeting the messenger. I think as a country we are in a place where there is need for more deliberate action in how we deal with the different groups of society, including the media. There are the other two areas, Anderson, before you move.
Very quickly.
There's a very concerning practice or trends where we see institutions that should be protecting the media, should be working with the media to protect the freedom of expression and the media freedoms, really. And some of these institutions include UCC and the other groups of institutions that in the recent past we see that they are taking the direction of being political tools, to target journalists in a manner of curtailing, in determining how they should conduct their business. We've actually seen recently in the meeting, and partly, even if it's part of their mandate, them engaging with the media, but from a very different instructions coming from different areas of the country. There are also concerns around the welfare and exploitation of journalists. Really, their environment of being able to exercise and remuneration of journalists. Many journalists today, and in our meeting today, part of the things that were being raised, there are journalists that still receive as low as 2,000. Maybe for a story, others receiving as low as 3,000 for a story, and you wonder how that would be able to support a journalist to be effective in their work. And so I think that there are fundamental issues, and even as we celebrate and commemorate this day, it's a great reminder on the role of the media. And now we are transitioning to actually citizens media, where you may not have much control. Citizen journalism, where you may not have much control. And so there is need to allow for that to thrive, of course, with checks and balances.
All right. Spectrum Xtra goes for a break now. When we return, we'll hear the views of the other panelists here in studio about the state of press freedom in our country. Stay tuned. Radio 1 FM 90 will continue. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Xtra live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week. We've just been discussing the political terrain in our country. We now want to shift our gears and look at press freedom. Tomorrow we'll be commemorating Press Freedom Day, and a number of issues have already been highlighted about the situation in Uganda. Now, let me bring in you, Joseph Ocheno, your quick thoughts on press freedom in our country.
One of the things that many people don't know is that from a refugee by NRA to an activist, a political player, and somehow got very deep into media work and media activism. And so you could actually say surprisingly, nearly 35 years of very organized activism within media mainstream. And so I have seen journalists and journalism both across the continent and around the world, and amongst the most poorly paid journalists in Africa, in particular, worse here in Uganda. And for many times I've tried to actually help in the media here in Uganda, even while I was away, in part because of that. The pay of journalists, like some of what Timothy said, is actually quite shocking. So when I came home, I found it very, very surprising. And so it's not surprising that sometimes then the quality of journalism itself struggles. I'm talking the broader aspect of it, because it's all net contribution to that. They're substantially badly paid. In many cases, some of these guys are substantially abused. In many cases, some of them are face cadre editorial work, which really doesn't help. Some of them pay, if you talk about the 2,000 or so, meaning me, I heard about the 20,000 shillings. Then you remind me of what Mr. Museveni was saying, talking about yesterday with the question of the minimum wage, which he rejects at 136,000 shillings. And for lest Ugandans forget that 6,000 shillings, which was set as a minimum wage in 1984 by the last UPC administration, 6,000, if you look at the currency conversion, which Museveni did in 1987, where we don't know where most of the money went anyway, this guy's bossed for nothing, 6,000 Uganda shillings would be equivalent of 780,000 shillings today, disregarding inflation since 1984. And so if you look at the minimum wage and you see what journalists earn, so that is terrible. Consider the fact that Facebook is still banned and we come into an election and nobody's talking about it. Consider the cost of data. Consider the amount of times that we don't have power. And then take the context within which journalists work around that and then bring it to the realities that have been talked about, how journalists are targeted, used and abused in this country. I found it most shocking, particularly what happened in Kawempe, when and where journalists were not only beaten, but deliberately targeted, including our good friends like the Steve Mbidis and others. That's extremely shocking and very, very unfortunate. How much Ugandans actually understand that journalism as the fourth estate is a critical element of the essence and of democracy, and that really they should really be our most critical observers to help the citizenry, and that journalists should actually in many cases be the ones to help actually address some of the questions that we are talking about here, that why is the Electoral Commission not doing its job? So these guys are really the professional critiquers, because most of the people in Nagongera don't have many times the capacity or the depth in order to challenge people in authority. Journalists do. So when we talk about press freedom, it's not only about the surface kind of stuff that we do, but qualitative journalists and quality journalists than that which will take the news, the information, and go ahead and help challenge, including the head teacher somewhere in Ruru Chinoni. But let me tell you something, that only the other day, is the first time I'm saying out publicly, a group of university students had invited me to go and become a chief guest. And a senior leader in the administration withdrew the whole thing and cancelled the event. Now, is that political repression? Is that about limitations, some sort of access for information? All I was going to be discussing was academics and reality. But the truth is that I'm a chairman of UPC of Nagongera, and to reach a stage in which a university, seeks to say no because I was the one going there as a chief guest, a keynote speaker, tells you that these limitations are really not only confined to journalism. Right. I think it's the nature of our national polity. Right. But at this heart must be the media. All right.
Let's hear from Honorable Lydia Wanyoto. NRM, one of the biggest achievements NRM has been talking about is liberalization of the media space. And each time you speak to NRM leaders, they'll tell you that the media in Uganda is thriving, vibrant, and contributing to the democratization and development of the country. But what's your take about the freedom aspect of it?
Yeah, even right here we are on a talk show that is very popular, and that's part of the story of the private sector, but also liberalized media. We also have community radios. So the liberation campaign has gone on, and maybe the regulation is also on. I do not think that there is a contradiction in government policy of liberalization of the media. What we see sometimes as contradiction are the actors vis-a-vis other stakeholders and interests. And this time is maybe we need to talk about the relationship between the media and maybe security forces. That's why we've seen a clash. So if we zero down to that, we'll be able to see how that is resolved.
What do you think is happening? So why do we have that bad relationship between the media and the security forces? Each report that comes out.
I think it is case by case, because many of the functions I've attended for security, including this week where there was Kaweweta, there was media coverage. Very, very well covered. Yesterday I was in Nakapilipilich. There was security, there was a parade. The coverage was very good. So I think that they are incident driven, and they should be able to sit down and resolve
Do you know as
where
we- do you know
where
as
the
we s-
problem is.
Do you know as we
But-
speak now, nation media outlets and NBS are not actually allowed to cover events of the president? And,
It happens, but you see, it is the
So
other,
what
it
covers
is the other way around. I have seen you people, the Kwago saying, now we do a blackout. You also,
So
there
you're
are
now
times
also
when
doing
you
blackout.
also strike and say we are going to have a blackout. So these are case by case. So I think that where they have not been able to work, like some people call it uncoordinated movement of troops, if they have not been able to work, they should sit and resolve their issues. And it's not one way. There are times when someone says, it's not only the State House. I've seen it. There was a time when Parliament was throwing away the press. But at the same time also, you know how you give people media blackout. Because for us in the public, and some of us who are in politics, even just a blackout is news. Or when you cover somebody, bad news is good news for us, as long as you're in the press. So it's a relationship that you need to grow. And I think that it should be handled case by case. We shouldn't leave it to grow and look like this relationship is so bad and there's a block in between. Let it be handled case by case. If there's a problem on an incident, let the editors or the owners, and the media sessions are organized. The owners, the private sector, whatever, they have associations. So where is the leadership? Why are they quiet? They should come out and say this particular incident, there was a problem, and then they engage. Because the media owners, or they have other association, the law provides for the journalist association. You are all organized into that was anticipated, that there will be a clash. And where there's a clash, there are mechanisms to resolve the problem. Where I sit, it shouldn't be like it is never meet. Handle the matter case by case. If there was a clash on a particular incident, let it be resolved as a standalone. So that you don't continue repeating without resolving the issue. That relationship is very important.
Well, we have had engagements, including playing football with the armed forces, but the challenge persists.
Deal with those challenges case by case, because sometimes the incidents may not be officially sanctioned. It could be individual character relations in the field, either on the side of the security, specifically security, or on the side of the individual journalists. So if we can do that, maybe, but also if you have been aggrieved, you can resolve your matter either informally, like I've said, engage, but you can also seek court redress, so that you either get back your equipment or you get damages if you have been injured.
All right.
The process for redress exists, but does not stop this conversation on the media. Because when you speak, nobody should think that when you talk here, you get ignored. Some people take notes, or they take note that there's a problem here.
All right.
Because with the moment you sustain it in the press, you are going to make it an agenda item, and decision makers somewhere, somehow, will be able to take note and take action against conduct or incidents that are not palatable to the public. Because who wants to have a bad media press? Now you see, these images do not stop in Uganda. They affect our tourism. They affect our investment destinations. Uganda, there's always fights, there's always conflict, and yet we claim to be, or actually we are, an island that has stability now and peace. So issues of stability are important for investment, destination, but also for tourism. So we have to be very careful.
All right. Very quickly, let's hear from you, Dr. Sarah Biret, on the issue of press freedom in our country, Uganda. Tomorrow, as we commemorate, what are some of the issues that you'd want to speak to?
Well, press freedom is a cornerstone for democracy. Unlike the Washington Post slogan, democracy dies in the dark. This year's press freedom report, released by the Human Rights Network for Journalists, is titled One Step Forward, Two Steps Backward. And it captures events for the year. The year events were, crowned with the torture of journalists in the Kawante by-elections. Shocking. I know in previous elections, journalists have been tortured, especially those who cover opposition candidates. But it has been, like isolated incidences, not corroborating everybody, not corroborating, and just for, to re-echo these things of the regime of Panda Gari versus Panda Drone. Who would have thought that after so much condemnation of Panda Gari, that the NRM would be here since 2020 implementing Panda Drone. Numberless drones abducting, kidnapping opposition supporters since 2020. They did it to win elections in 2021. They have continued their whole tenure. So this is a Panda Drone tenure of the NRM. So when you look at journalism, I know everybody was, outraged saying journalism is not a crime, but who doesn't know the rule of journalism? Whereas Idi Amin's atrocities could be forgiven, given that he was a primary dropout, we are dealing with highly educated leaders of the NRM, now also holding out as a junta. Highly educated. So what they can't benefit from the excuse of Idi Amin, of little education. You corrupt journalists doing their work, you torture them. Some of them spend 3 weeks in hospital, bedridden, working on crunches, really, in this day and time, and you think you have power? Brutal power? Brutal power is not power. So when you look at the conduct, the regime, the way the regime deals with anybody in their way of impunity. One time it's civil society, like how they arrested 28 of our colleagues for observing elections they wanted to rig. Then another day it will be journalists. Tomorrow it will be somebody else. Like that saying of they came for the Jews. I thought I was not part of this because I was not a Jew. They came for the trade unions. I did not pay attention because I was not a trade unionist. They will come unless we stop impunity. So if we continue to disregard the Constitution, continue to disregard the rule of law, it's a matter of time. Just a few months ago, we had traders. So if anybody out there thinks that you're safe, that this artificial stability is stability, and we avoid questions of the day, it's a matter of time. Even those who support NRM, they will be victims one day of impunity that they are supporting today.
Right. Wanyoto talks about could be a problem maybe between the journalists and
what problem? Journalists have come to cover elections. What was the problem? And if there is a problem, don't we have laws in this country? If there is a problem, does it equate to Panda Drone? Don't we have laws as a country? What is the use of the Constitution and the laws? So nobody can argue that there is a problem. It's what causes impunity. No, that's a no-brainer. If anybody has caused the problem, anybody has violated laws, deal with them in accordance with the laws. Why do you abduct people? You abduct journalists, you beat them, you break their whatever, you break equipment, that because there is a problem? Really? Then why do we have the Constitution and laws in the country?
All right. We are moving towards the end of this discussion, so we need to actually sum up this discussion. But there is another crucial issue. Maybe I would want Honorable Lydia Wanyoto to lead us in this particular area, the issue of the workers' rights. Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, you were in Eastern Uganda as we commemorated the International Labour Day, and a number of promises there by President Yoweri Museveni, including on issues he never wanted to hear anyone talking about: minimum wage. Should the Ugandan workers begin to smile, things are going to get better very quickly as we're coming to the end of this show.
First of all, yesterday I was in Nakapilipili, it is in Karamoja, to mark the International Labour Day, and I would like to wish all the workers, including those in the studio, a very happy Labour Day. But that day is important because then the focus is put on the status of the workers and the policies of the country. And then it's like showcasing. It is a scorecard. Where are we? Where are we as a country? And yesterday there was a report card from the relevant sectors on how far we have come in terms of government, but also the trade unionists and their leaders, COF2 and NATU were also telling us how far we've gone as workers. There are still issues that I can call about Mutwe once. The minimum wage is not yet on the table, and that speaks to the workspace in terms of issues of dignity. The dignity of a person. They are the bare minimum of a person's labor. It's even historical since the Industrial Revolution. So that in our country has not been resolved, and for me it's very important. There are issues of also humanity, the environment under which people work. That has not been resolved. Another issue was that even as we grow the industrialization of our country, we have a lot of people who have come and they are working, they are put up industries, but the labor environment has not been addressed well. For example, we know that some industries or owners of industries, when they are required to hire people, they use farms, like Kenneth Lukwago, you have an employment farm. So I come to you and I say, I want 300 workers. You go and procure for me workers. Now when they come to work with me, I don't have an obligation to their basic rights like protective gear when they fall sick. So the terms and conditions of service are skewed towards the other employer getting profits, but also the one who contracted. Now, most of the people who procure employment don't have even operational licenses. So you find that there is a lot of labor disputes. So, of course, this is work in progress, but it's an opportunity for us as a country to ensure that there are basics, bare minimums in terms of the dignity, the workspace, the rights of human beings, and issues of, you'd call it Ubuntu, humanity.
Ubuntu.
Yeah, so that when you employ somebody, there are those, the fellow safety, the safety and the environment where someone works, protective gear, issues of health, issues of compensation, issues of a decent workplace, but also decent labor. And you've seen that
decent pay.
So these are some of the yesterday the commitments were re-echoed. But when you move around, you do not see the speed at which you want, and yet you want it to be. And Uganda is not an island, so you want to see what's happening even within the East African community, because Kenya has a minimum wage. Rwanda, they have standards. Burundi, but for us, we say because we are still attracting investors, we shouldn't be very tight on laws that talk about the minimum wage, decent work, safety. The regulations of safety are there, but enforcement is a problem. I also want to finalize by saying that there was a mention about the Uganda has about 75% young people. Actually, our young people are over below the age of 35. They are over 75% of our country. We have a very young population, and as of late, also skilled. Since UPE and UCE, and you wanted to talk about they have a liberalized media, but also liberalized education sector. So we have everybody in Uganda gives education very, very priority. Every parent takes a child to school, even with UPE and UCE. So you find that a lot of people now, even with these training hubs, skilling hubs, people have some level of education, but also some level of skill. Now we have a young population. So you find that the jobs opportunity in the market are not enough. And that's why you have this recent campaign of the externalization of labor. Now, while Uganda is now beginning under Ministry of Gender to negotiate good relations or good labor arrangements with the licenses with the international community, like these countries, UAE and Turkey and elsewhere, it is not up to the mark. And when our girls and boys go there, you hear what has been the feedback which has been coming. So this is work in progress, but which country would like to give away its youngest population? So these are challenges we have. The challenge is there, the gaps still exist, but we must harness the young skills we have and opportunity of the youth to be able to put their labor to productive use in our country.
All right, time
A
is not
beautiful
very on our
country.
side. Very quickly, in a few seconds, Joseph, because time is not on our side.
No, I think this is one of the countries that abuses labor, like you can think about it, like mini slavery. The continuation of export of particularly girls, young beautiful girls, some of them highly skilled, to go ahead and become cleaners in Arab world is something that must stop. A future UPC government would review labor laws very urgently and ensure that the youth and children of our country are born to become citizens that make net contribution in this country and this continent, rather than actually becoming cleaners abroad. But as I said, very quickly, like I could say, this minimum wage thing is urgent. We could not have equivalent of 780,000 shillings minimum wage in 1984. And today is 136,000, and Mr. Museveni says no. But he has got money to give to his dubious NRA MPs at 100 million shillings as a gift. It's criminal. It's something that Ugandans ought to wake up at. If we're preparing ourselves for elections, then every Ugandan citizen must demand that anybody who touched that 100 million Uganda shillings is not returned to Parliament, and anybody who gave them is not voted for as president.
I'm afraid.